Why does Yoda use a cane? In Star Wars, we've all seen Yoda show off how acrobatic he was, but have you ever found it weird that despite this, he still used a cane? Well, let's just say this cane was way more important than you may think. Yoda's cane was called a Gimmer stick, and it was a gift that the Wookiees gave him years before Episode 1. However, he didn't only use this stick just to walk with, but crazy enough, he actually used to chew on it. As funny as it sounds, this stick had juice inside of it that Yoda could have whenever he was thirsty. This then gave him the rich nutrients that he needed whenever he was traveling throughout the galaxy. Why did Yoda act so crazy when meeting Luke? Although we all know that when Yoda met Luke, he acted like an absolute maniac, but have you ever wondered as to why? Well, crazy enough, he actually did this on purpose. Throughout his 900 years of living, Yoda used a technique where he would trick students into believing that he was frail. When he saw Luke for the first time, he was afraid of how similar he would be to Anakin, so he acted different to test his patience. However, as they spent more time together, Yoda then realized that Luke was different and he had the potential to become a great Jedi. How did Yoda embarrass General Grievous? Throughout the Clone Wars, one thing we never got to see was a duel between Grievous and Yoda, but did you know they actually did encounter each other one time? Well, after sneaking onto Grievous's ship, Yoda would confront the droid general for the very first time. As the two began to duel, Yoda didn't hold back with his banter, taunting Grievous for being so weak with his lightsaber skills. He told him that although he fought with a Jedi's weapon, he would never actually possess the true skills of a Jedi. As a few of Grievous's droids then entered the fight, Yoda quickly escaped through the vent above, which only angered Grievous. On his way out, he then force-pulled one of Grievous's blue lightsabers out of his hand, telling him that although Dooku might have taught him how to fight with a lightsaber, he clearly never taught him how to keep hold of it. As Yoda held both lightsabers, he then left by saying that perhaps that was a lesson for another time. Why does Yoda speak backwards? One of Yoda's most noticeable qualities was the fact that he spoke backwards, but have you ever wondered why he did this? Well, there's actually an explanation for this. In the novel Fate of the Jedi Backlash, we learned that Ben Skywalker, the son of Luke, made a theory that the reason for this was because Yoda lived for 900 years, and he was sick and tired of hearing the same phrases the same old way. Because of this, Yoda would then choose to do this on purpose, making the conversation more interesting and people would then pay more attention to his message. This theory could actually prove to be true, as we know that unlike Yoda, others from his species spoke normal. Could Yoda's species become a Sith? Although Yoda's species is shrouded in mystery, every user that we've seen of their kind are not only a Force user, but all wielders of the light side. So this makes us wonder, could anybody from his species actually become a dark side user? Well, unlike others, Yoda's species could live up to a total of 900 years. Because of this, their lifespan allows them to observe the galaxy in a more positive way, relying on their patience a lot more compared to that of a normal human. This is why we rarely see any of them choose the quick and easy path like the dark side. Yoda, who was able to understand both sides of the Force, even admitted that he had a dark side to him, but because of both his viewpoints and his devotion to the light, he never let it consume him. So although it's not technically impossible for him and others of his species to fall to the dark side, it would be an extremely rare sighting to see. Why did Yoda hate Count Dooku's lightsaber? Although Count Dooku had one of the most unique lightsabers in all of Star Wars, did you know that Yoda actually hated it? Well, unlike the other Jedi, Dooku had an obsession with lightsaber dueling, so he designed his final saber to have a curved hilt. However, this curved hilt wasn't just for looks. It actually gave him an advantage over his enemies, because it admitted his saber at a different angle, which then allowed his strikes to be unpredictable. This worried Yoda, because at this point in the timeline, the Jedi believed that the Sith were still extinct, so the only lightsaber duels they did have were against other fellow Jedi while they were training. So although it went against what the Jedi stood for, Dooku was prepared for the times ahead. Why did Yoda refuse to join the rebellion? After the events of Order 66 and Yoda heading into exile, surprisingly, he never chose to help the rebellion. But why? Well, there's actually an explanation for this. While in his hut, Obi-Wan's Force Ghost communicated to Yoda, and the two spoke about everything that happened. Yoda told him that he was purposely trying to avoid speaking to him because he felt like such a failure. He failed to see Palpatine's corruption of both the Senate and Anakin, but most importantly, he failed to stop him when he had the chance to. He then told Obi-Wan that the reason he went into exile wasn't just for self-punishment for his failures, but instead it was also to remove himself from events. In Yoda's eyes, the galaxy was far better off without him there. Why did Yoda want to train Leia instead of Luke? After the birth of both Luke and Leia, Yoda watched over the two of them through the Force. He'd watch as they grew up, where eventually he was able to notice the different qualities between the two. Unlike Luke, Yoda saw Leia as a lot more calmer, and saw that she had many qualities she received from her mother. Because of this, he believed these traits would allow her to become a great Jedi. However, as for Luke on the other hand, Yoda believed he had way too many similarities to Anakin. He saw Luke as both reckless and impatient, and he believed that if he trained him, he would end up just like his father. But as we know, in the end, Yoda was wrong, and it was Luke who was able to bring Anakin back to the light. Why did Yoda promise to never use a lightsaber after Order 66? After Order 66, Yoda blamed himself for losing to Darth Sidious and for allowing the Jedi Order to be destroyed. Because of this, he then decided to punish himself for his own failures. One of these punishments was a promise he made to never use a lightsaber ever again. However, despite this, he still used another weapon. Although we never saw it in the films, Yoda decided to build something completely different than a lightsaber. This weapon was no other than a bow and arrow. How did Yoda know about the Sith rule of 2? In The Phantom Menace, we see Yoda tell Mace Windu that the Sith always had both a master and an apprentice. But have you ever wondered how he even knew this? Well, about 150 years before Episode 1, there was a Jedi Padawan named Qui-Gon who was sadly corrupted by the dark side. Because he was so consumed, Gon slaughtered his own master and eventually caused chaos throughout the galaxy over the next few years. To put an end to him, the Jedi decided to hunt down and kill Gon themselves, but when they killed him, the most unexpected thing happened. In his dying words, Gon then recited the entire rule of 2, telling the Jedi that there could only be 2 Sith at a time. Unfortunately, the Jedi thought he was lying, but when the Sith finally returned, they then realized that Gon was right all along. What was the weird thing that Yoda did after Qui-Gon's death? While many mourned the death of Qui-Gon Jinn, Yoda decided to honor the fallen Jedi by doing something both kind, however, also unusual. After Qui-Gon's death, his Jedi robes were brought back to Coruscant and were kept within the Jedi archives as a relic of memorabilia. However, towards the end of the Clone Wars, Yoda would train under Qui-Gon's guidance to learn more about retaining consciousness after death. To honor his new master, Yoda returned to the Jedi Temple shortly after the events of Order 66 and retrieved his old Jedi robes. After obtaining them, he then arrived on Dagobah, where he then chose to do a very unusual thing with the robes. Yoda decided to use Qui-Gon's robes as a blanket, which would keep him both snuggled and warm. Who were the 2 Jedi that Yoda believed could defeat Darth Sidious? After realizing the threat of Darth Sidious, there were 2 Jedi Yoda thought could take on the Dark Lord if he were ever to be revealed. The first, of course, was no other than Mace Windu, as he was known as a powerful warrior and was second in command to Yoda himself. But the second choice might surprise you a little bit. Unlike somebody such as Obi-Wan Kenobi or even Ki-Adi-Mundi, he believed that the Jedi Master Agent Kolar could actually defeat him. Kolar was known for his exceptional lightsaber combat abilities and was recognized as one of the most elite duelists in the entire order. However, despite Yoda's faith in him, Kolar died within seconds to Darth Sidious himself. Why did Count Dooku believe that Yoda once used the dark side? Shortly after their duel and Attack of the Clones, Dooku's thoughts are shared after he fought his former master. Reflecting on their fight, he was shocked that Yoda was able to deflect his Force lightning and that there was a possible chance that he did in fact know the dark side. But this wasn't the only thing. Dooku and Yoda would encounter each other again just months after Episode 2, but this time on the planet of Vizhun. By the end of their encounter, Yoda openly admitted to Dooku that he did actually carry a dark side within him. After hearing this led Dooku to seeing many similarities between both Palpatine and Yoda. In Dooku's eyes, the both of them appeared to be old and frail, but in reality, they were a lot more powerful than they seemed. These thoughts began to terrify him as he then began to question whether or not Yoda had ever fallen to the dark side in the past. How many Jedi did Yoda train? Grandmaster Yoda lived for a total of 900 years and trained many Jedi throughout different eras. Most of the Jedi Council members you see were either trained directly by Yoda or assisted in training by him. He helped train many younglings until they became Padawans, some even Jedi with their lightsaber combat, or even mentoring and advice at times. But with Luke Skywalker being the final Jedi that Yoda trained a total of over 20,000 Jedi throughout his years. Who was Yoda's master? We all know that Yoda lived for 900 years. However, do you know who his master was? Well, this was no other than Jedi Master Enkata del Gormo, a Force-sensitive Hysalrian male. But how he found Yoda might surprise you a little bit. He found him after Yoda crash-landed on a swamp world near the planet of Dagobah. Yoda was with a human friend when they crashed, and they went to Del Gormo for assistance. But after a couple days together, he began to notice Yoda and his friend's capabilities, and that their connection with the Force was extremely strong. Therefore, he offered to train them both as Padawans. After this, Yoda then began his training on Coruscant and would achieve the title of Jedi Master within his first 100 years of living. If you enjoyed this lore compilation about Yoda and you want to learn more about Qui-Gon's best stories, then make sure to click the video in the middle of the screen right here.